This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's talk a little bit about his relationship with Ric Flair. Terry wrote in his book that Rick was upset with the promos he was cutting on him while he was out, quote unquote, injured. Do you remember there being some? I mean, obviously Terry and Rick are the best of friends, but Rick can be an emotional guy, as we both know.
Yep.
Remember him being upset with Terry?
Yeah, I do. And I remember getting phone calls. What are you guys trying to do? Kill me?
Wow.
No, Rick, we're not trying to kill you. We're selling a fucking angle. Anybody that knows an angle and how you sell it will be you. So, no, we're not trying to kill you. But, you know, a lot of the guys, he knew Rick would always get a straight answer from me. He always also knew I would take his call. If some of the booking committee guys saw that Flair was calling them, they might just avoid that phone call as long as they could until they had to accept it. And I didn't have any guilt in that regard. I knew what we're trying to do. We're trying to get heat on Funk and make him a heel. And goddamn, he was middle-aged and crazy then. And we knew our hero was going to ride back in on his big white horse sooner than later. But yeah, he didn't like it. I remember we did an angle one time with, he's passed on now, but he worked in the office. Ron, God damn, I just had it tip of my tongue too. But he came out, he looked a little bit like Barney Fife, had a Flair-like robe on.
Yep.
Remember that? Ron Ames. I think Ron died of HIV or something.
Oh shit.
Yeah, nice guy. He really was a nice guy, hard worker, did PR and things like that. But Terry sees him in the office and says, "There's my guy for play the part of Ric Flair." And Ron was about, like I said, he looked like Barney Fife. He looked like Don Knotts. And that was one of his impressions. He'd do it at happy hour. It was funny.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Ron passed away in 1993.
So, but a good dude. And all he did was he did a very limp woo. And that offended Nate. And again, it was like, you're really getting pissed. So this must be working. If you are pissed off,
you're smart to the business and you're pissed off, it's working.
And it may be working to these other folks out there, as Herd would say, the hinterlands. And it did work. You know, that showed that was a great marriage. And, you know, my God, Flair and Funk, are you kidding? So come on, Rick. So he got over it, as we all know. But he did get his feelings hurt. But he was out of the picture. He didn't want to be out of the picture, but that was the angle and how the angle was set up to sell. Somebody's got to be out of the picture for a while with this injury. And people aren't dropped on their head on tables outside the ring very often. So that's kind of where that was. But Rick was pissed off for a while about that.
Let's talk about Ricky Steamboat. Terry Funk is going to main event Clash of the Champions against Ricky Steamboat, where Steamboat wins by DQ because Funk has repeatedly hit Steamboat with a ringside mic. And it's pretty amazing when you think about how timeless Terry Funk is. This is happening 14 years after he won the NWA World Title, and he's still main eventing Clash of the Champions. But he's on a collision course with Ric Flair. They finally meet at Great American Bash in Baltimore, July 23rd, 1989. It drew the biggest and best gate WCW had until 1996. So quite the spectacle here.
Yeah.
Flair would pin Funk with an inside cradle even after Funk debuted his new manager, Gary Hart. The match itself is one that fans still talk about. Flair occasionally watches this one. I know he called and asked me, "Hey, when was I wearing the purple and I wrestled Funk again? I want to watch that. What was that?" Great American Bash 89, Rick.
Yeah.
Go out of your way to see it. It's a great match. Not my favorite they had. We're going to get there in a moment, but what a moment it was. What about Gary Hart though? Terry Funk is a hell of a promo. Why did we think we needed Gary Hart? Was it to make sure the fans booed him?
That was a consideration without a doubt, because Rick had not made that full transformation into babyface land.
Yeah.
He resisted that, quite frankly, for a long time, because he had more fun being a heel. Rick loved to be booed. He loved that sort of interaction with the live audience. But he'd been around so long and so beloved and respected, more importantly, because of his work ethic and his skill set, that people were starting to cheer him anyway. But I think Gary would stack the deck a little bit more against Nate, therefore making it more easily to motivate the audience to cheer Flair, the underdog, because Gary was a looming figure on the outside. Gary Hart wasn't a small guy. He's probably 6'2" or 6'3". He had that great facial expression. And we didn't need Gary to cut the promos for Terry. Unless Terry wasn't there, then you had one of the great representatives that you could get cutting promos for this angle. But I think that was the situation there. And I can promise you that if Rick and Terry had not endorsed it and liked it, checked the box, Gary Hart would not have been in the picture. The talents made sure that happened for whatever reasons they may have had. Now, you may talk to Rick sometime at a family reunion or something. You might ask him, how did Gary Hart get picked?
Right.
Was that your idea? Was it Terry's idea? Was it? I don't know that it would have been Herd's idea, but it might be. I don't underestimate that either. But I think that was the reason. Gary was such an established heel that he made. It wasn't the he's going to make Terry a even more hated heel. He was going to make Rick even a more beloved new babyface.
Well, Gary forms the JTEX Corporation, and Terry Funk and the Great Muta are put together, and now they're going to face Sting and Ric Flair at Halloween Havoc. Not in a regular match, not in just a regular old cage match, but an electrified cage match. Before we get there, we should talk about the buildup that got a lot of people upset. Terry Funk is going to put a plastic bag over Ric Flair's head in an attempt to suffocate him.
Yeah.
The legend goes that this got Mr. Herd summoned to Ted Turner's office. Hey, the fuck are you doing down there? What do you remember about this?
I mean, it got corporate heat.
Yeah.
And it got, I'm not so sure Ted gave a shit, but his board and his underlings, they did give a shit.
A lot.
Yeah. And so it was a major deal for a while. But nobody lost their job. So I always say, well, it must have been, I'm sure Ted had to do this lip service. Cause obviously Terry was not going to suffocate Flair. I mean, that means death. So anyway, I don't want to say it got blown out of proportion. It should never have happened. But I can tell you that, on the corporate side, who looked at us as redheaded stepchildren anyway, they were pissed. Irresponsible broadcasting is how I remember that story. And I'm sitting in a position, I don't know who's going to do it. And then what do? You got to call it, Conrad. I can back off my call, back off my intensity a little bit to not glorify it, glamorize it. But it is what it is. There it is. Look at it. You can see it. So, it wasn't a good day at the office on that deal.
Let's talk about the Thunderdome. No, not the one in WWE. The original one, the OG here from Halloween Havoc 1989. That's what we're calling this crazy electrified cage match. And the paper on the cage, there's lots of decoration, if you will. It actually catches on fire right before the match, which turns into a whole thing. This is a very WCW moment. What do you remember sitting ringside and seeing things fall apart here?
Well, you hope that it could be salvaged, that we didn't, go down like the Titanic. I remember Great Muta spitting his mist. I think I recall that. And on the fire, I didn't know why we did that match. I don't know why we had to have an electrified cage. Now that's a Jim Herd decision or influence, at least, that maybe the folks at Turner Home Entertainment thought was cool, and that happened often. But I don't know why we had to have that such a gimmick, because we had an amazingly personal issue, and he had some of the greatest talents in the history of wrestling involved. I'm going to let those guys decide what they want to. I learned that from Cowboy. What do you guys want to do? I want to work a return. Tell me how you're going to get there. What's in your mind? How would you book this match? But I don't think any of those guys sort of booked an electrified cage and all that bullshit. I mean, my God, look at the people that are at ringside. You got Gary Hart out there. You got Ole Anderson out there, 2 Hall of Fame guys. Look in the ring. Young, great Muda, who probably should have been the NWA champion at some point in time. That never happened. And I think him being Japanese was one of the issues. He didn't speak good enough English. So, you go back and look back in the 40s and 50s, some of those cats that were champion, excluding Lou, a lot of those guys were not great orators. But they were hired and they were kept on because of their work in the ring, not for their verbal skills. So I always thought that we missed the boat on Muda on that deal. But nonetheless, it was what it was. But the whole cage thing, it made a good promo.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that it was a Herd Turner Home Entertainment concept. Because I just can't imagine the guys that are in the match creating that.
Well, let's talk about how interesting this is, because Bruno is here. We're throwing everything against the wall here. Bruno's going to make his debut. He's the special guest referee. Ole's in the corner for Sting and Flair. Gary is in the corner for Funk and Muda. And the match ends when one of the cornermen throw in the towel. Flair has Funk in the figure 4. Ole's punching Gary Hart, who happens to throw the towel in, and now Sting and Flair are the winners. There's so many finishes in this era designated to be cute.
Yeah.
Not very many that are decisive. In hindsight, were finishes like this hurting WCW long-term, do you think?
I think so. I think it hurts any company, Conrad.
Yeah.
You can only slip on so many banana peels. You can only have so many inadvertent this or inadvertent that leads to the conclusion of the match. And again, just sitting in on booking meetings and talking to top talent over my career, you ask the talent, what the hell? What do you want to do? How can we get to, it's like Cowboy saying, I'm going to bring you in January. I'm going to program you with a dog, JYD, back in the heyday, and I want to blow it off on Thanksgiving night in New Orleans at the Superdome. Give me your vision of how that can be facilitated. So it wasn't always just the booker doing it. The booker wanted the talent to buy in, be emotionally invested in their angle, because the more tickets they sold, the more money they were going to make. So you had a roadmap. You start in January, for example. Could be earlier, could be a little bit later, but usually not. And then you're going to blow it off on Thanksgiving. Subsequently, the returns will come through the Christmas holiday. So there's a method to the madness there. But I just don't think we needed to do that. I don't think it added anything other than it was a cool promo. That's it.
Right. Well, next up is the conclusion, I guess you would call it, with this incredible feud with Flair. And I think Flair's 89 has been discussed forever. Of course, we start with the trilogy with Steamboat. We're immediately programmed with Funk. And it's going to culminate at Clash of the Champions, Troy, New York, the New York Knockout. It's the ultimate I Quit match. Flair's going to make Funk submit to the figure 4 leg lock. Dave Meltzer gave it 5 stars. I think it's probably, if it's not my very favorite, it's my second favorite Ric Flair match ever. And it's got to be near the top for Terry Funk too. What say you?
I loved it. I selected Gordon solely to be my partner, selfishly, egocentrically, because I wanted to work with him. And it was going to be up to me to carry the load anyway, which is fine. I was paid well for it. I wanted to work with Gordon. I didn't know how many more big events we were going to have. And of course, the nice thing about Clash was that there were commercial breaks. So if Gordon needed me to freshen up his drink, which I did. Screwdrivers for the drink of the day, as long as there's plenty of vodka. I don't think the vitamin C content was a focal point. But I wanted to work with Gordon. You got Tommy Young as a referee, arguably the best referee ever. Certainly one of them. top 2 or 3 in my estimation. Then you got Nate, you got Terry. My God, you got Gary Hart, Hall of Famers everywhere. So it was one of my favorite matches to do. I remember it was a cold night in Troy, New York. I'd never been to Troy, New York. I know Gordon was very apprehensive. Night before dinner, he was worried about his performance and how he was going to be, because it was a 2-hour show, and he was apprehensive, to say the very least. So I thought that was just a hell of a presentation. My issue was, it wasn't an issue. My thought process has led me to wonder how we're getting out of this thing.
Right.
Because it was, I quit. That's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
One of these 2 cats got to say, I quit. How are we going to get there? So I loved it. I thought it was a hell of a night. I can't even remember anything else on that card right now, Conrad. The undercard, the semi-main, all that good stuff, what opened the show, all that good stuff. But I can tell you that I feel very honored to be a part of that presentation. I don't know what Rick did. Did Rick ever say anything about that? Did he enjoy that match?
Loved it.
Yeah, good.
Loved it.
Yeah. Well, it was like you said, good advice. If you get a chance, folks, go check it out. Go back and watch that one match.
This is the one.
This is the one.
Funk wraps up his run here doing commentary before his contract expires, including working with you for part of Starrcade 89 and Wrestle War 90. Do you think there's anything else that could have been done with Terry, or was he ready to go home?
That's a good question. And my speculative answer would be, I think he might have been ready to tag out for a while. Again, Conrad, I don't have it in front of me, but I don't know how old he was at that point in time. He was, you can do the math there because you're a mortgage guy. You can work your calculator real well, but he wasn't a young guy in 93 or 89 or 90. He's got to be in his 40s or early 50s or something, right?
He was 45 in 89.
There you go.
So, when he leaves, he's going to be turning 46 years old here in 90.
Yeah. And even with a legendary guy like Terry, he knows what his body will endure. And he knows that his recovery time is starting to take longer because of his age and the fact that he was never a finesse guy. He was to a large degree, I guess you could say, but he was very physical. And his body took a beating. So I think more than anything, he was just ready to tag out and heal, quite frankly. But I don't think he didn't hate the business. He didn't leave all pissed off and angry as I recall. And again, I had a little bit of say in who I worked with. So he gets 2 more shots. He and I working together, which should indicate to people with common sense, JR liked working with Terry Funk at the announce desk. And I did. So, because we didn't have long pre-games, we didn't have to go over. I've worked with people that had to have everything explained, and they would go behind my back and try to get more information on the finish. And I said, well, if that's what you want to do, then you can do that. But just don't share your information with me because I don't want to know. I'm a broadcaster. I'm going to look at this like a ball game and look at it as it's live. Same today. Saturday night on TNT, I'm not going to know. Come here from sick of what's going to happen. I could. I don't want to know.
Right.
I don't need to know. So I don't need it. I'm not that big a mark. I'm a mark. If that's a decent word today, I don't know if it is or not. But I think that he needed to heal and that's what he did. But he left under good stead. I mean, he had contributed a lot to the company.
Oh yeah, a ton.
And he had made money. And he got reinvented on national television. He's working a top program. I mean, come on, Conrad. He worked with Flair and Steamboat.
Yeah, he had a great run, made a lot of money. It feels like he always knows when to come in and when to go out. He's